3 spine-chilling true janitor tales, revealed sinister secrets in haunted halls of horror. Dave, the night janitor, trudged into the crumbling local high school, a place where the echo of laughter had long died. The dim, flickering lights cast twisted shadows on the peeling walls, and an uneasy silence wrapped around him like a frigid shroud. He was a middle-aged man with weary eyes, facing a daunting load: a sick mother at home and bills piling up like autumn leaves. This school, once a vibrant center of a community, now felt like a graveyard of memories, and he was the reluctant caretaker of its secrets. As Dave pushed his mop across the cracked linoleum, unfamiliar whispers began to curl around his ears like smoke. Familiarity turned to unease when he realized the sound seeped from the old locker rooms, where the air felt thick and suffocating. Suddenly, the lights flickered erratically, casting long, ghostly figures in the empty gym that felt like vacant memories, hovering, distorted and mocking. He clenched his fists, feeling the cold sweat trickle down his back. This eerie emptiness stole the little comfort he had felt moments before. 5 years had passed since Ms. Williams, a beloved teacher, vanished during a late-night meeting. The town had brushed the tale under the rug, pretending it never happened, a dark specter they all chose to ignore. But as Dave scrubbed the floors, peeling away layers of dirt, he felt something there beneath the surface, something alive. His heart raced. Each night, he couldn't shake the feeling that something otherworldly was at play, something waiting in the shadows. "Just my imagination," he muttered, trying in vain to silence the growing unease. Yet a mix of dread and determination fueled him, compelling him to dig deeper. The more he worked, the more he felt he needed to uncover the truth behind Ms. Williams' disappearance. He glanced at the faded murals, memories screaming silently for justice. Each stroke held sorrow, and as he stared into those ghostly eyes, he could sense they had secrets of their own. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. When Dave encountered Mr. Campbell, a respected figure in town who worked part-time as a custodian, the tension thickened. His words dripped with cryptic advice shadowed by palpable threats. "Some things are best left alone, Dave," Campbell warned, eyes darkening. That night, the whispers morphed into chilling laughter, a siren call to the haunted past that cut through the indifferent walls. Dave was deep into a web of secrets, and the fabric of his reality started to unravel. He stumbled upon odd, grotesque stains on the walls that seemed to depict anguished faces. Heart pounding, he tried to alert the authorities, desperate to share his findings only to be met with dismissive smirks. Was he just a paranoid janitor? No one saw the truth. No one cared. Alone in the suffocating darkness, fear clawed at his sanity as he realized the school had become a sinister labyrinth, each corner tinged with horror. As the night dragged on, he sensed a malevolent presence closing in. The footsteps echoed behind him, cruel in their mockery. Panic surged through his veins. Dave knew he had to confront the lurking darkness and the man in the shadows, but with the lights flickering ominously, he stood at the edge of an abyss that threatened to swallow him whole. Would he emerge into the flickering light, or would he be consumed by the very horrors that haunted the halls of his high school? Dave took a shaky breath, steeling himself against the palpable dread that clawed at his insides. The laughter echoed through the hallways, twisting around him like serpents seeking to ensnare him in their coils. He gripped his mop tighter, taking a cautious step towards the locker rooms, that cursed space that seemed to vibrate with unspoken nightmares. The flickering lights above him were now more than a nuisance, they were an omen. Suddenly, the sound of a locker slamming shut pierced the silence, a thundering admonition that sent his heart racing. He froze, the hairs on his arms standing on end. "Hello?" The word slipped out, trembling in the air, unanswered save for his own voice reverberating back at him. The gym loomed ahead, a massive cavern of forgotten echoes and potential horrors. The shadows were deep, concealing whatever lurked just beyond the edge. His instinct screamed at him to flee, to run out of this haunted haven and never look back. But curiosity twisted through his fear like a vine through a fence. What if Ms. Williams' spirit was trapped here, calling for help? What if he was the only one who could bring her peace? Fueled by a mixture of dread and determination, Dave stepped forward. As he edged toward the locker room door, it creaked open just slightly, inviting yet threatening. He swallowed hard. Inside, darkness enveloped him. The only light came from the flickering bulb outside. Shadows danced along the tiles, distorting into grotesque shapes. The faint whispers had grown louder, scrabbling into frenzy. Were they just his imagination? Or something more? Show yourself. He yelled into the void, anger and fear blending to create a quavering shout. The response was immediate silence, then a soft but unmistakable sound of sobbing. His heart thundered painfully in his chest. Was someone there? The thought sent chills racing up his spine. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside, the scent of mildew and rust filling his lungs. The source of the sobbing seemed to emanate from the far corner, shrouded in pitch black. Dave's pulse quickened. Just beyond the door, the world continued as if nothing were amiss. But here, he sensed the gravity of the past collapsing onto the present. I'm not here to harm you. I just want to help. He called, his voice catching slightly. The sobbing ceased abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence so heavy that it felt like a physical weight. He felt the air thicken, as if the very walls were breathing, waiting. Then a figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette, stark against the dim light. Dave's breath caught painfully in his throat. Who are you? He whispered, fully aware of how fragile the moment had become. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it raised a hand, pointing directly at him with a long, bony finger. At that moment, the lights began to flicker violently, illuminating the figure's features, a ghastly face with hollow eyes that bored into his very soul. Panic surged through him, and he stumbled backward, crashing against the lockers. The specter took a step closer, and the air turned frigid. A coldness clawed at his skin, and he felt the stabbing bite of fear tightening around him. Help! A voice wailed, hollow yet impossibly pleading. The word echoed loudly, reverberating off the walls, merging with his growing dread. The figure spoke again, but it was more than words. It vibrated through his bones, reverberating with anguish. You must leave. Suddenly, the locker doors started slamming shut one after another, as if caught in a supernatural wind. This was madness, pure and terrifying. Dave turned to flee but felt something cold brush against him. He glanced back, his heart nearly stopping as he saw the spirit hover just inches from his face, its eyes pleading yet hungry. With a scream caught in his throat, he raced out of the locker room, the laughter now a cacophony around him, echoing and stabbing into his mind. He bolted for the exit, heart pounding wildly, panic suffocating him in its grip. But just as he reached the door, he heard one last whisper, his name hanging in the air like a lost refrain, binding him to the terrifying mystery of the night. Dave, what did it mean? What did it want? The questions clawed at him even as he fled into the night, knowing he had only scratched the surface of horrors yet to be unearthed. He stumbled into the chilling darkness outside, but the night swallowed him whole. Shadows danced and whispered as he realized he had awakened something that could never be put back to rest. What awaited him now was deeper, darker, and more terrifying than he could ever have imagined. He had to return. What awaited him in the haunted halls that night? Dave's pulse was still racing as he stepped back into the suffocating silence of the schoolyard. The flickering lights of the gymnasium had felt like a twisted beacon, but now in the dark, every shadow seemed to hold crouching threats. He glanced over his shoulder, expecting to see the ghost's hollow eyes following him, but the night was still, too still. Yet, he couldn't shake the haunting whisper of his name from his mind. It lingered like a noxious fog, filling him with dread and an unnerving sense of urgency. He turned and faced the gym once more, the entrance looming like a gaping maw. He had to know what leave truly meant. Was leaving supposed to be his escape, or was it a warning? Gathering his courage, he returned to the door. As he pushed it open, a gust of cold air rushed out, plunging him back into the ancestral smell of mildew and forgotten memories. Shakily, he stepped inside, the lights flickering in disarray. The echoes of distant laughter still taunted him, weaving their way into his consciousness as if the walls themselves were conspiring against him. "Ms. Williams," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Nothing answered. Dave advanced, heart thumping in his chest, inching closer to the locker room where everything had spiraled out of control. The air felt heavy, thick with unseen sorrow. He hesitated at the threshold, breath hitching in his throat. Each locker stood like a tombstone, grim and imposing. "Come on, just show yourself," he pleaded into the shadows. With a tremor, he stepped over the threshold, and the door creaked ominously behind him as if it was sealing him in. Straining to see through the darkness, he squinted, searching for any hint of movement. The sobbing sounded again, soft like a mother's lullaby turned into a tragic refrain. Gradually, it pierced through his fragile resolve. "Please, I want to help you," he called, but his words felt empty in the cold, damp air. Just like before, the silence swallowed his voice whole. Suddenly, the lights above burst to life, illuminating every corner with stark clarity. His heart sank as he noticed the rows of lockers now painted with scratches and strange markings in the wood. Was it blood? The whispers swirled around him, wrapping tighter, constricting, mocking his presence. He knew he shouldn't be there. He felt the weight of the Spirit's command clinging to him. But then he heard it again, his name, clear and desperate. Dave, his breath hitched. That wasn't just a spirit calling. That was someone yearning for freedom. Instinctively, he moved along the row of lockers, the sound of his footsteps echoing. "I'm here. Who's there?" he shouted. A door slammed shut, vibrating the floor beneath his feet. He jumped, adrenaline coursing through him. "What do you want?" Instead of a response, the sobbing intensified, growing layered like voices in a choir. It thrummed against his ribcage and struck against his sanity, leaving him dizzy. Then, one lone locker flew open, the door swinging wide with a thunderous bang. A chill raced down his spine as he peered into the dark space. Something flickered inside, a faint glimmer amidst the shadows. Curiosity flared, urging him forward, but fear coiled tightly around his core. He hesitated, instinctively wanting to retreat, yet the glimmer called to him like a forgotten promise. As he leaned closer, a chilling breeze swept through the room, carrying the faint scent of decay and something sweetly rotten. The air thickened, and he felt as though the walls were closing in, urging him toward the unknown. Then, he heard it, a low growl hummed within the locker, vibrating in anger or perhaps hunger. Something was waiting, something that had been trapped and desperate, just like Ms. Williams. Dave, the voice was sharper, urgent. Before he could react, a frigid hand wrapped around his wrist, tight and unyielding. With a scream caught deep in his throat, he turned to find himself face to face with a tattered figure, one that looked all too familiar but twisted, lethal. In that moment, all thoughts of escape vanished. He was part of this horror now. Who or what stood before him? What had he unleashed? As panic clawed at his throat, he braced himself for the answer, knowing he might never find a way out again. The dread of the unknown loomed as he gasped, frozen in place, understanding that the real terror had only just begun. "What do you want?" he whispered, trembling. The figure's gaze locked onto his, and for the first time, Dave was certain that whatever haunted the school didn't just want to be freed, it wanted something far more sinister. But what could that possibly be? The grip on Dave's wrist was like ice. He jolted back, reality blurring around him. This wasn't just a ghost, this was something worse. The figure leaned forward, its eyes two voids that swallowed light. A twisted smile crept across its lips, a mockery of the face he used to know. "Help." The single word dripped with malice, as if it had been scraped from the depths of despair. Dave recoiled. His heart hammered violently against his ribs. What did it want? There were no answers here, only more questions that unraveled like dark tendrils wrapping around his mind. "Ms. Williams?" he croaked, voice shaky. "Is that you?" The figure's laughter echoed, cold and lifeless, and the air around him thickened like fog rolling in from a graveyard. It bent unnaturally, bones cracking and popping, stretching toward him with grotesque ease. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to escape while there was still time, but his feet felt glued to the ground. "Foolish boy, you don't know what you've opened." The words hung heavy, suffocating. Clenching his jaw, Dave forced his legs to move, stepping back inch by excruciating inch, but the back of his heels brushed against the edge of a locker. He turned and kicked it open, using the noise as a distraction. The sound reverberated through the locker room, drowning out his rising panic. Peering inside, he saw nothing but darkness. Only shadows gazed back. He glanced at the figure. It remained, slithering closer, the air around it growing icy, setting his skin aflame with dread. Then a thought pierced through the chaos, the glimmer he had seen. Wasn't there something there? Dave had only moments to act. He plunged his hand into the locker, fingers searching wildly in the inky void. The cold air grew sharper, almost slicing at him as if the space were alive with malice. His fingertips brushed against something metallic. He grasped it and yanked it out. A key. An old rusted key, twisted and weathered. The figure froze, eyes narrowing sharply. "Leave it," hissed, suddenly fierce. The voice was no longer just a whisper, it was a command, a warning. The tension crackled and snapped like frail branches underfoot. Dave's mind raced. Leave? Or unlock? He didn't have the time to parse the threat. The world around him faded into fog, stripped away until only he and the ghost remained. Something primal stirred in his gut. Unlock what? He pressed, desperation fueling his defiance. Her. The word emerged like a curse, heavy with pathos. The figure jerked, twisting in place, as if wrestling with unseen forces. It lunged forward, and Dave stumbled back, his body slamming against the lockers. He barely caught his breath when he heard an urgent pounding. What was that? He gasped. More knocking erupted from inside the other lockers, an insistent rapping that resonated through his bones. It startled him, the echoes beating faster than his heart. Were there others trapped, too? Or was it just the ghastly spirit playing with his mind? The ghost huffed, its breath a bitter wind laced with graveyard dust. Never open the doors. They hungered. Desperation clawed at him. What if there were innocent souls stuck inside? What if they had answers? The shadows danced around the edges of his vision, and from somewhere deep inside the school came a high-pitched wail that seemed to echo from another time, another life. Help! The voice begged, almost like a plea. He hesitated, his fingers trembling over the key. It felt heavy with consequence. More pounding. The sobbing grew louder, harmonizing with the ghost's threat. Time slipped away, the air crackling with electricity, leaving Dave suspended between hope and horror. With a deep breath, he fought through the knots in his gut and raised the key. Then I'll help. What had he just unleashed? As the locker doors all burst open, shadows poured forth like smoke, leaving just enough space between them to reveal an incomprehensible horror that awaited. Dave's scream echoed down the empty hallways, reverberating in a heart-stopping mix of dread and confusion. What lay beyond the locked doors? Would he discover a terrifying truth, or perhaps something far worse? The shadows spilled forth, swirling into a dark tide that enveloped the locker room. Dave stumbled back, heart racing, nearly losing his footing. The shrieks and cries gained volume, morphing into a cacophony that buzzed in his ears. The air crackled with tension, each inhalation filled him with dread. Close your eyes, a voice squeaked amidst the din. It was faint but insistent. You won't want to see. But he couldn't look away. He had to know. A figure surged from the shadows, pale and gaunt, its face stretched into a grimace of pain. It reached out, ethereal fingers brushing against the edges of reality, almost slipping through the cracks of existence. "Help me. I can't breathe," it wailed, its voice a strangled whisper. In that moment, time bent. Dave could feel the weight of despair folding over him, crushing. The ghostly hand clawed toward him, no longer just seeking help but demanding something. Was it asking for him to let it out? Or was it a warning, a reminder of souls that had been consumed? His mind spun with horror that twisted his stomach. "What do you want?" he shouted, voice shaking. "I want to escape." The plea ripped through his chest like a dagger, souring the air. "He keeps us here. Forever." As the shadows converged, Dave felt a chill seep into his bones. Dark tendrils wrapped around him, whispering secrets of the school's past, dark rituals, forgotten deaths, and the janitor who had grown too fond of the darkness. Each locker door he had opened seemed linked, each cry a piece of a larger puzzle. The figure of the ghost twisted, showing him glimpses of the fates that awaited these lost souls. A group of children, their faces frozen in fear, their eyes pleading for salvation. A figure, heavy-set and hulking, lurking in the corner, watching. Dave's heart raced. He knew that man. That was Mr. Jenkins, the school's janitor. The man everyone else had always dismissed as a harmless eccentric was the architect of this horror. Then it dawned on him Mr. Jenkins had always been around. He swept through the halls with a fateful presence, with brooms whispering secrets. Each time he passed by, laughter and joy would dim into silence. The laughter echoed again, the ghost's voice mingling with memories. He's always watching, waiting for someone to open the door. Dave nodded. He thought of the key still clutched tightly in his hand. He had to choose, reach deeper into the shadows or try to escape. But what lurked behind the other doors? Footfalls echoed in the hallway, urgency sparked a flicker of hope, but it was quickly extinguished by the shadows that twitched around him. He needed to find the truth not just for himself, but for those trapped. His breath panted out like smoke, only to fade in the choke of thickening fear. Find him. He holds the answers. The former teacher's voice urged, filled with manic energy. Panic surged through Dave, the pounding in his chest threatened to drown out reason. He turned, running towards the nearest heavy wooden door, heart racing, unsure what he would discover on the other side. Why had he thought he could handle this? But before he could grasp the handle, he felt it, a cold touch lingering on his shoulder. Spinning around, he faced the ghost once more, its hollow eyes boring into his soul. "You don't understand, the real horror lies in knowing." He hesitated, torn between terror and the desperate need to know. The looming darkness behind him shivered, thickening in anticipation. The screams continued, pleading for liberation. Would he really dare unlock that door? What revelations lay beyond the veil? Dave swallowed hard as he turned back toward the door, the key trembling in his grip. Would he confront Mr. Jenkins or yield to the darkness? The question hung heavy like a noose around his neck. Time stretched as he prepared to turn the key, teetering on the edge of discovery and utter madness. What truth would he uncover? The key felt slick and cold in Dave's sweaty palm. He gritted his teeth and twisted it, dread flooding through his veins. The door creaked open, shrieking into the void like the screams that surrounded him. A dark hallway stretched before him, flickering light casting long, wavering shadows. The air carried a suffocating chill, mingling with the acrid scent of mildew and something far more sinister. He stepped inside, a chill cascading down his spine. Careful, the ghost mused, her voice trailing off like a breeze through the leaves. He can sense fear. Dave glanced around, searching for signs of life, for anything beyond the consuming darkness. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him, plunging him into near-complete blackness. Panic surged, his breath quickened as he pounded on the wood, desperate to escape. "Let me out!" he shouted, the sound swallowed by the oppressive silence. Then he heard it, a low groan emanating from the depths of the hallway, deep like the growl of a waking beast. Dave's heart raced as shadows danced closer, swirling in response to the sound. "Dave," the ghost rasped, her voice urgent. "He's coming." He turned, fleeing down the corridor as dread clawed at him. The lights flickered violently, revealing brief glimpses of peeling wallpaper and rusted pipes that hinted at the neglect of this forgotten place. With each step, he felt the weight of unseen eyes upon him, an audience of lost souls. "Do you see him?" the ghost pleaded, her voice slicing through the tension. "Do you see the darkness?" He stopped and squinted, straining against the dimness ahead. At the end of the hallway, a figure materialized, a hulking silhouette, outlined by the faintest glimmer of light. It was Mr. Jenkins, and he seemed to absorb the very radiance around him like a moon void of light. "You shouldn't be here," the janitor rumbled, his voice gravelly, drenched in malice. "This place is not for the living." Dave's breath hitched. The tales of disappearances from the school echoed in his mind, students who ventured too far, who never returned. He felt a knot of fear tighten in his stomach. "Run," the ghost hissed. "He preys on the curious." Instinct kicked in, Dave whirled, sprinting back down the hallway, but he could hear Jenkins' footsteps echoing, growing louder, stalking him like a predator playing with its prey. The air thickened with dread, suffocating, as if invisible hands were trying to hold him back. His mind raced with questions. Why was Jenkins doing this? What had happened to all those souls? He glanced over his shoulder, but the janitor was closing in, eyes no longer human, glinting with hunger. "Want you join us?" Jenkins crooned, his voice deceptively soothing. "I can show you the truth for a price." Dave's heart thundered. The ghost was right, he had to escape. He burst through a doorway on his left, plunging into a room filled with dust and decay. The walls had scrawls, frantic drawings of lives torn apart, faces twisted in agony. "No!" he gasped, stepping back, the terrifying realization crashing over him. These weren't just random lines, they were stories of all the lives Jenkins had claimed. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him, sealing him in darkness. Heart racing, he felt around, his fingers brushing against something sharp, a hidden tool, an old rusty wrench. "Find the way out!" the ghost screamed. The shadows began to swirl, alive with anger. Dave clutched the wrench, a flicker of defiance sparking within him. Would he confront Mr. Jenkins or succumb to the darkness that sought to claim him? Before he could decide, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the halls, pulling him back into the fray. It wasn't just fear, it was the sound of someone still trapped, begging for escape, just like he was. "Help me," it pleaded, staring into the abyss. Dave realized he must choose not just for himself, but for those still ensnared in the darkness. The truth awaited him, but at what cost? Would he salvage the lives still trapped before it was too late? Or was it all too late already? Dave's breath caught in his throat, a thick knot of terror. The ghost's whispers melted into the chilling cry of despair echoing through the room. "Help me!" the voice was haunting, almost sending him reeling back into the shadows, where he might drown in darkness. The wrench felt heavy in his grip as he wrestled with fear and courage. He was no longer just a curious intruder, he was a potential rescuer. Each sound reverberated through his skull, a cacophony of despair that fueled him. He pressed the palm of his free hand against the door, searching for an escape, any crack that might lead him back to light. "Dave!" the ghost's voice pierced through the chaotic echoes, sharp and urgent. "You have to choose. The screams will guide you, but it's a trap." "A trap?" Panic rose again, clawing at him as he hesitated. His instincts screamed to run, but the plea resonated deep within his soul, binding him to the cries of the tormented. He stepped closer to the wall, tracing the frantic scrawls. Portraits of anguish, twisted bodies, and eyes that seemed alive, fueled by the despair of lost lives. Most frightening were the faces he recognized, friends, classmates, children like him. "Jenkins, he lures them," the ghost said, almost in a whisper. To share in his power. Suddenly, the door behind him began to rattle. Jenkins. With adrenaline surging, Dave spun, the wrench raised, ready to fight. The shadows slithered closer, blending with the fear, a living entity coaxing him to surrender. Dave the janitor's voice rumbled through the cracks, low and menacing. "You're too late for your friend." "No. Not again." He had to be stronger. "Leave him alone." Dave shouted, the words tearing from his throat like chains breaking. The rattling stopped. Silence cocooned him, thick and heavy. He felt the pressure of the darkness pushing against him, but he wouldn't give in. He wouldn't let fear claim him. "Can you hear it?" The ghost's voice returned, softer now, beckoning. The sound of the door realization crashed over him like ice water. There had to be another way out, a means to fight against the pull of Jenkins. Dave spun back to the wall, searching for anything that would help him unleash the screams from their prison. He pressed a palm against the nearby wall, letting his fingers dance over the drawn faces, whispering their stories to himself. "Help us," they sighed, their faint whispers harmonizing like a haunting lullaby. His heart raced, and he could feel the warmth of their presence pulsing through him, lending him strength. The floor creaked beneath him. He whipped his head towards the door as he tightened his grip on the wrench. Jenkins was testing it, feeling for weakness. A growl replaced the silence. Panic surged, but alongside it surged a new sense of purpose. He had to act. Taking a deep breath, he slammed the wrench against the wall. "I will save you," he shouted into the darkness, the determination igniting a fire within him. Jenkins' response was a guttural roar that growled through the cracks. "Foolish boy, you can't escape." Before Dave could react, the wall beside him shuddered. A dark shadow twisted and shifted, breaking the surface of reality around him. Were they trying to break free? The faces on the wall flickered like flames in a storm. "Help us. Help me." A scream erupted from the wall, another soul trapped in the nightmare, thrumming with desperation. He could feel their fear pooling into a desperate energy, filling the air with an electric promise of hope, and then it hit him, the truth: he wasn't just fighting for himself. He was part of something bigger. With newfound strength, he faced the door, wrench raised. Would he open it? As he prepared to clash with the dark force on the other side, 3 more screams erupted, their sound colliding in a chaotic symphony of anguish. Desperation choked him. "Dave!" The ghost echoed, urging him to leap into the unknown. He felt the weight of the trapped souls behind him, and the call of Jenkins wrapping around his heart like a vice. Could he find the key? Would the darkness consume him before the truth finally broke through? In that tense moment, he knew he had only one chance to save them all. What lay beyond the door? Dave's heart thundered like a war drum as he raised the wrench high, the cool metal glinting in the dim light that barely penetrated the oppressive atmosphere. The air felt thick, alive with a tension that threatened to suffocate him. Silence weighed upon him, broken only by the faint, desperate murmurs of the souls trapped within the walls. He could almost feel their icy breath, the chill of their dread seeping into his bones. "Open it, Dave." The ghost urged again, a pleading edge creeping into her voice that sent a shiver racing down his spine. With a heave of effort, he slammed the wrench against the door, the metal ringing out like a funeral bell. "I'm coming for you," he shouted, but his voice trembled, wavering under the oppressive weight of Jenkins' menacing laughter. Just as he was about to bring the wrench down again, the door burst open, flinging him backward into the room. Shadows erupted around him like fireflies, swirling in a frenetic dance of chaos. They whispered and shrieked, laughing mockingly at his misguided bravery. In the doorway stood Jenkins, a monstrous silhouette framed by the harsh light spilling into the room. His eyes burned with a malevolent glow, each one filled with malicious delight as he surveyed Dave with an unsettling, toothy grin. "You think you can save them? You're too late, boy," he growled, each syllable dripping with a blend of anger and amusement. The ground beneath Dave vibrated ominously, and he staggered to regain his footing. Every instinct in him screamed to flee, but he couldn't let fear drive him away. He could hear the cries of the trapped souls, their agony echoed in his mind like a haunting melody he had to push through. He bolted toward Jenkins, the wrench raised high, ready to strike. "Let them go!" he shouted, desperate rage pooling in his veins. But the janitor simply stepped aside, a serpentine twist of his body that seemed more like a dance than a dodge. "Foolish boy!" Jenkins roared, and the shadows swarmed around him, wrapping like vines. They reached out, pulling at Dave's limbs, urging him to relent. "Fight it!" the ghost urged, her voice a beacon amidst the chaos. "Find the key hidden in their screams." In that moment, the swirling shadows concentrated into a singular focal point, the faces twisted in torment, mouths gaping wider and more desperate. "Help us please!" they cried, their voices piercing through the storm like arrows of anguish aimed right for his heart. Dave closed his eyes, the wrench lowering slightly. Instead of fighting against them, he opened himself to their pain, feeling it every layer of despair, every forgotten tear washing over him like a torrential flood. It hurt deeply. But it awakened something in him, a pulse of courage that contradicted the paralyzing fear. "I will find you," he vowed, his determination crystallizing into a fierce resolve. He swung the wrench in a wide arc, crashing it into the wall where the voices were strongest. Plaster crumbled, dust billowed, and suddenly the walls trembled like they had a heartbeat. Dark fissures split the surface, and a blinding light erupted from within. "No!" Jenkins thundered, the shadows recoiling as if burned. The energy pulled at Dave, wrapping around him, invisible yet potent. He felt the lives and stories coalesce into a single entity, a rushing tide of hope that surged through him, like he had tapped into a hidden reservoir of strength born from shared suffering. But Jenkins lunged forward, eyes blazing, his fingers outstretched towards Dave. "It's mine. You'll never break free." Just as the brilliant light blinded him, Dave caught a glimpse of the delicate, ethereal form of the ghost, her face transformed from one of despair to fierce hope, urging him onward. Would he unleash the trapped souls? Or would Jenkins snuff out the light forever? As the light surged, swallowing him whole, the last echo of the ghost's voice rang in his ears, the key, the door, and then it was darkness again. What awaited him on the other side? Had he ventured into salvation or a worse nightmare? Dave was lost in an abyss of shadows, the suffocating silence pressing against his chest like a vice. He felt weightless, adrift, as if he had been turned inside out. The absence of color tormented him, yet the whispers still lingered, curling around him like smoke, echoing intimate fears. They grew louder, an agonizing harmony of cries that blurred into one chilling requiem. "Help us!" It was the ghost, her voice now a desperate wail, slicing through the darkness. "Find the door." But where was the door? Panic welled up within him. He could feel the icy fingers of despair clawing at his mind. Any moment now, Jenkins could rear his head again, ready to unleash a hellish fate. Dave closed his eyes tightly, grounding himself. He had to remember the light, conjure it back. His mind flashed to the wrench still gripped in his palm, the cold, familiar weight that symbolized hope, a weapon against the darkness. He took a deep breath, focusing on the echoes around him. "Door. Key." He shouted into the void, as if his words could summon the very thing he sought. The shadows twisted, morphing into shapes that danced at the edge of perception. Then, he caught at a flicker of illumination in the oppressive blackness, just the faintest glimmer. Heart racing, he pushed forward, his instincts driving him toward the light. It pulsed gently, a beacon teasing him with promise. As he drew nearer, the whispers grew in intensity. "Dave! Help!" they cried, fear woven tightly into their urgency. Then it happened, a split second of clarity pierced the confusion. The light swelled, filling his vision, and he stumbled into a familiar setting. He was standing in the hallway of the school, just outside the room where it all began. Jenkins stood at the far end, silhouetted by the light spilling through a window frame. The janitor was not alone, a cluster of shadows, their features indistinct but brimming with sorrow, flanked him, faces Dave had seen before, those seeking solace. "Welcome back, boy wonder," Jenkins sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. "Did you think you could conquer this realm with mere bravery? Let them go." Dave shouted, but his words trembled, caught in the throat of dread. "But they belong to me. Just as your hopes will soon dissolve." Jenkins roared, raising his arm. The shadows flew forward, dark tendrils stretching for Dave, curling menacingly around his legs. "Fight it." The ghost's voice pierced through, urging him on. "Find the light, it's the key." He felt the wrench slipping from his fingers, but no, he would not fall. Not now. Not ever. Dave grunted against the pressure, the cold squeezing tighter. With daunting resolve, he tore himself from the shadows gripping him, every fiber of his being ignited with defiance. Digging deep, he focused on that pulsing light. In a desperate act of sheer will, he thrust his palm toward the shimmering glow. "I will set them free," he screamed, a force surging through him. The air crackled as energy surged, fractures in reality forming around Jenkins, the darkness recoiling. But Jenkins was not done. Fury twisted his features into a mask of rage, an animalistic snarl. "You think you can take them?" he bellowed, shadows swirling dangerously around him, an unrelenting storm. With a blinding flash, the light surged, clashing against Jenkins. Dave felt the pressure release. Freedom was within reach, but would it come at a cost? In that final moment, Jenkins' roars of anger melded with shrieks of despair. The walls around them shook, dust cascaded down like a rain of sorrow, and Dave felt the world wobble. But he could see more than just a way out now. Images danced in front of him, faces of the trapped souls, their fear morphing into something unyielding. "We will not be held," they cried out, rallying together in a sheer act of will against their captor. The room was a cacophony of chaos, the light, the screams, the shadows. "Join us," they beckoned, voices harmonizing in a crescendo, a rallying cry of liberation. It was now or never. Around him, darkness clawed wildly, and the light surged in response, illuminating every crack in the walls. Would Dave be strong enough to harness this tidal wave, or would he become another lost soul, swallowed by Jenkins' darkness? The answer trembled just out of reach, heartbeat quickening as the world around him ripped apart. Dave's heart hammered violently in his chest as he fought against the darkness swirling around him. The spectacle was like nothing he had ever experienced, an all-consuming struggle between light and shadow. As the frantic cries of the trapped souls echoed in his ears, he realized it was not merely his fear gripping him but their desperation pulsating through him. "Find the key," the ghost urged, her voice a distant echo laced with urgency and courage. With a surge of determination, Dave focused on that pulsing light, the source of this newfound power that coursed through his veins. Every ounce of his fear transformed into a fierce longing for understanding, an understanding that would unlock the chains binding the lost souls to Jenkins. "Let them go," he shouted, his voice rising above the chaos, gaining strength as he faced the monstrous janitor. Jenkins' eyes glimmered with disdain, but there was a hint of uncertainty, a flicker of fear that revealed cracks in his monstrous facade. "You cannot take them from me," he roared, a torrent of shadows rippling from him in a desperate attempt to reclaim control, but Dave felt invigorated. The awareness surged within him. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was their beacon of hope. He took a steadying breath and summoned everything the ghosts had given him, a collective yearning for release that burned brighter than any shadow. In a moment of clarity, he pointed toward Jenkins, locking eyes with the twisted janitor. "You will not win. I won't let you." The shadows writhed, reaching for him, but Dave felt their grasp weaken as the light intensified. It bathed him in warmth, urging him forward. "Together," he shouted, invoking the spirits trapped in the darkness. The cries grew louder, melding into a chorus of defiance, a tidal wave of anger and sorrow that surged alongside Dave's own courage. As he leaned into the light, he felt a pivotal shift. The air cracked and popped with energy. The weight of fear surrendered to the potential of freedom. "I release you," he declared, his voice now a rallying cry. All of you. Break your chains. In that climactic moment, the light surged forward, engulfing Jenkins, who wailed in a visceral display of fury and terror. The shadows recoiled, peeling away from him like dark ink dispersing in water, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. No! You cannot stop me! Jenkins shouted, panic seeping into his voice, but it was too late. The spirits converged, their cries unifying into a singular force of liberation that washed over the room. The walls trembled, disintegrating under the power of their combined will. With one final surge, the light pumped, flooding the space and erasing any remnants of darkness. Then, silence. Dave blinked against the brightness, stumbling as the shadows evaporated into wisps. One moment, he was surrounded by endless fear, the next, he stood in an empty hallway, the air now crisp and clear. The debris of the school lay scattered around him, remnants of a battle fiercely waged. He breathed deeply, another layer of tension uncoiling in his chest. There, standing beside him in sheer brilliance, was the ghost of Ms. Williams, her face serene and radiant. "Thank you," she whispered softly, the warmth of her gratitude washing over him like gentle rain. "You've set us free." Dave felt a mix of relief and sorrow wash over him. Despite their release, he carried the weight of their pasts. But what about Jenkins? Is he gone for good? He stammered, concern creeping into his heart. She smiled delicately, a hint of sadness in her gaze. The darkness will always linger, fueling the fear of the unknown. But you, her eyes twinkled with encouragement, you've seen it. Never let it consume you. Awaken the light in others. As she faded, her silhouette softened into an iridescent glow that filled the hallway. It pulsed with energy, urging him to step forward, to carry forth the stories of those lost. "Goodbye, Ms. Williams," he whispered, an ache in his heart. "I'll remember." And as the first light of dawn crept through the fractured windows, Dave understood what he needed to do. The school could become a sanctuary of hope, a refuge for stories yearning to be told. With the daylight shining on him, he stepped out of the haunted halls, determined to share the truth he had uncovered, to honor the lost and protect the living. As he mustered the courage to breathe life back into the school, he vowed never to forget the whispers in the darkness, the laughter it had once held. But now, they would echo with stories of courage, the light he would help others find. In that moment, he left the shadows behind, accepting the new path ahead. The past was a part of him, but it would not define his future, and that's how it ended for Dave. But it can always begin anew with you. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the next exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the tales alive. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And remember, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible ending. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of showing support.